If you've ever tried to memorize the unit circle and all those angles and square root fractions, just stop. I'm going to show you one trick to write sine and cosine of every angle around the unit circle in seconds without any memorizing and without any triangles. If you don't know me, my name's Brandon, and I've worked with hundreds of AP Calculus students over the years, and I have never made a single one memorize the unit circle because it's just too inefficient. Here's the only thing you need. All you have to remember is to represent every single part of the unit circle, every single angle in this format. Square root of blank over 2. Square root of blank over 2. And you can see I've replaced every single spot on the unit circle with square root of blank over 2. And then we'll start down at the bottom right. You have to think about, what is this angle really? Because we're representing it in a weird way with square root of blank over 2, but you'll see why we do that in a second. Well, here you need to know that cosine is always the x-coordinate and sine is always the y-coordinate, right? So if you think about it, and also the radius of the circle is always 1. So if you put all those facts together, hopefully it makes sense that the x-coordinate will just be the cosine, which is 1, and then the y-coordinate of this point right here will just be 0, right? Because we're going to the right one, up 0. So the coordinate is 1, 0. So now that you have that, all you have to do is think about what would actually be equivalent to that in this weird format. So what number would I have to put inside of this square root to make it equal 1, to make the whole thing equal 1? Well, in order to equal 1, the numerator and denominator would have to be the same. The denominator's 2, therefore the numerator would have to be 2. So the question is, square root of what equals 2? And the answer to that is 4. So write a 4 there. Same question here. So here we need the numerator to be 0 because 0 divided by 2 would be 0. So square root of what is 0? 0. There you go. Now we've gotten started correctly. And then what do you do to get to the rest of the standard angles around the unit circle? 30, 45, 60, 90 degrees. Basically, as we start with the x-coordinate, we're already at the maximum x-coordinate to the right. So we're going to start counting down. So for example, we're going to write 3 here. And then for the y value, we're going to be counting up, right? Because we're starting at a y value 0. The y value is going to keep increasing as we go counterclockwise around the first quadrant. So now we're just going to keep counting up. So 0 becomes 1. And then you just keep following this pattern. As you go down the x-coordinates, you count down. As you go up around the y-coordinates, you count up. So 3, that'll become a 2. This will become a 2. This will become a 1. This will become a 3. This will become a 0. And this will become a 4. And once you have everything in this format, it's a lot easier to translate, right? So think about what you're used to for this format at 30 degrees or pi over 6 radians. It's probably radical 3 over 2, comma, what's square root of 1? 1. So 1/2. There you go. That's the one you're probably used to seeing on the unit circle. Square root of 2 over 2, this is already in the right format. That's what we're used to seeing. Up here, it's going to be kind of the opposite of what we did at the 30 degrees. It'll just be 1/2, comma, square root of 3 over 2. And then finally up here, what's this going to be? 0, comma 1. So there you go. Just by getting started down here correctly and knowing the trick, you can figure out all the ones in the middle. And by the way, if you're a student who's going into AP Calculus this year, or you're already in AP Calculus and you're feeling nervous, I help students get on top of AP Calculus so they get A's on their tests and 5 on the AP exam in May. I'm always happy to meet to see if I can help in your situation. If you want to talk, feel free to schedule anytime. The link's in the description. Anyways, back to the video. So we just talked about how to find every single value in the first quadrant. Now, how do we do the same thing in the second quadrant? Well, the good news is it's the same pattern. So we need to write that square root. So starting at this first value, that square root of blank over 2, comma, square root of blank over 2. But we just need to continue the pattern. So what's the pattern that we're doing as we go around here, right? We're starting with an x-coordinate of 4, and then we're just, as we go counterclockwise, we're just steadily decreasing it. 3, 2, 1, 0. You just do the same thing. It's just that you're not going to get a -1. And here you have to be careful. You don't put the negative inside the square root. That would be a complex number. That's not correct. But you have to just remember to put the negative on the outside. So hopefully that makes sense. And then what's the pattern that we're following for the y-coordinate? Well, we go up. We started at 0. We went up to 4. 4 is the maximum. Remember, like each of these values, the x and the y-coordinates should go between -4 and 4, right? So once you just keep going in the same direction until you hit a min, and then you turn around, and then you keep going until you hit the maximum, and then you turn around. So here, we hit the maximum for the y values of 4. So now we turn around and we, instead of going up, we start going down. So this is 3. And then you just keep going in this pattern. So this next one, think about what this next one will be. This will be negative 2 if we're counting down, negative 2 over 2. And then for the 3s, we're also counting down, square root of 2 over 2, positive square root of 2 over 2. And you can just keep going until you go down the quadrant. And then once you have that, you can continue to go all the way around the unit circle, right? Once we get down to here, we're dealing with negative square root of 4 over 2, comma, square root of 0 over 2. And you just keep going. So we hit the minimum, the x value. So now we start counting up, negative square root of 3 over 2 right here. And then down here, we keep counting down for the y values. So we get negative square root of 1 over 2. And you can just keep following this pattern around the unit circle. So you really only need to get started on the first one and know how to set it up. And then you can just follow the same pattern all the way around the unit circle until you get back where you started. So there you go. That's how you can reconstruct the entire unit circle from scratch without having to memorize anything. If you found that helpful, feel free to just comment below on any other topics that you'd like me to make a video on, and I'll take a look and I'll make a video on them. So I hope that was helpful, and catch you next time.